All right, everybody. Welcome to the session today. We're so glad you're here, whether you're watching it live with us, hey, or you're watching this on demand after the fact. Regardless, we're glad that you're here with us to hear about some of the latest trends, opportunities, challenges all around hiring, talent acquisition, recruiting, all that good stuff. George, glad to be here with you and looking forward to another fun session.
Really excited about this, Ben, as we dive into this. I've not been this excited about TA in a long time. But some of the new findings we're going to be sharing and the conversations you've had with some of our incredible speakers today is going to be fun. Be fun for everybody.
Yeah, we have some great speakers coming up. We have some good content. Obviously, research is one of the big reasons we do this. Every year, we do our big study at Lighthouse around what's happening, what's changing. We survey leaders like all of you. What are the things you're facing? What are the things you're worried about? How are you dealing with this versus that? And then we also survey candidates. And so we'll sprinkle some of those things in towards the end, really sharing that. Actually, that's a lie. I sprinkle that through every conversation that we recorded today. It's not held to the end. It's been sprinkled throughout. And then towards the end, we'll get into a deep dive. We are actually going to have that portion we put together yesterday for all of you. We actually brought in Roberta from our team, from our research team, to have another voice in the mix and to add a little culture. Like her accent, George, I love it. So I can't compete with that, my Southern. So if you want to bring our announcements up, we'll jump into some of those sorts of things that everybody needs to know for the session today.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're excited about what's going on here today, as Ben said, speaking about all things candidate fraud, AI, and modern hiring experiences. And as Ben mentioned, the culture aspect of it and what really is going to impact and where we see this heading, not just for the remainder of this year. I think it's really pivotal for the next 16, 24 months, being that we regain or gain back some of these words that you're going to be hearing a lot of: the clarity, the communication, the trust, and things of that nature. So very excited about that. Mm-hmm. Quick announcements. We always have a lot of housekeeping. Just as a reminder, Ben loves to give away things. And so today we're going to be giving away his book. And so for all those great comments, Talent Scarcity, we're going to be giving away a handful of those books, maybe a dozen of books, who knows. But we reward great comments.
Yes.
Keep the chat going. We love insights. Share your insights. Share some things that you've learned. Maybe it could be a struggle. You never know. But we're looking at some of those great comments and interactions in the chat. So keep the chat going. Stay engaged and share on your stream. Share this as well, especially if you're watching this live. If you're watching this on demand, please share it. I believe there's some great content that's going to be had for everybody. As always, any Lighthouse virtual event, we're going to have SHRM HRCI credits. Those will be at the end. We'll share those credits with you at the end of the stream. So make sure you stay tuned to that to be able to get your 2 hours of HRCI and SHRM credits. And listen, live streams are approximate, and we are actually live. Some of the sessions are pre-recorded, but Ben and I are live with you today. So technology can be technology. We've been known to crash a little bit of the LinkedIn or YouTube sites, and no matter what, we'll get that back up and running. But times are approximate. And so make sure you stay tuned. If you have any issues, drop them in the chat, and our team will be able to address those accordingly.
All right.
Ben, you want to share a little bit about the speakers today?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a great crew here. We have, really quickly, a shout out to our sponsors. So Criteria, they're an assessment company helping companies try to figure out how to hire the right people, filter through the candidates that are out there. Josh and I are going to have a great conversation about that. Some of the new data around how resumes are falling off as a signal for who to hire. They've always been a little bit touchy, but they're getting worse, frankly. And so we'll talk about that piece there. Really excited about that. Cliff over at Phenom, he and I talk about one of our favorite topics to go back and forth on, which is AI. Cliff has some really big ideas and some really cool ways of thinking about it. The metaphors he uses, George is going to love those, by the way. He hasn't seen that yet, so George will be taking some notes on that from Cliff, who has some really great ideas on how we can use AI to create better outcomes, create better results, all that good stuff when it comes to hiring the right people. And as I mentioned a minute ago, Roberta, George, and I are going to do our research share towards the end of the session today. We'll be coming together to put that out for you. But I actually want to give a shout out, goodness, I'm getting choked up already, to Ryan Henning. He is going to be our opening session that will start in just a few minutes. Number one, I told Ryan the first time I met him, golly, you have an incredible voice. He's like, you ever done a podcast? No. So we actually recorded a podcast a while back, and I said, that hasn't even come out yet. But would you join me with this other thing? And he said, yes. And so he and I go deep into how hiring's changing, some of the things you have to think about when it comes to connecting with candidates, the difficulty, but also the necessity of showing respect to candidates, being good about circling back with them. So lots of good stuff. Amazing set of speakers, people that I highly respect and appreciate. And so we're going to learn from all of them. I took notes during every conversation, and I'm actually going back through a couple of those now just to pull my takeaways back in, because there's so many good things you're going to hear from those. So great speakers, George, that we have the privilege of sharing today on the stream. And I'm so excited to hear from all of them. I know you're going to get some good takeaways and tips too.
Awesome.
Anything else in our announcements?
Yeah, let's go over the agenda. Actually, I think you kind of went over some of these things with the agenda, but some great lineups. We're going to kick off here in a second, as you said, with Ryan, what talent teams are solving in 2026, and then going beyond the resume, using data and assessments to hiring the right talent, and that's what criteria. Very excited about that. I haven't had any opportunity to see any of these videos or sessions that Ben has. What I am most looking forward to is at the end, and I always laugh. There's tears to my eyes about your conversation and one of your almost best, not best, hiring opportunities that you had. You'll share that story at the end. Everybody had to hold on to their pants, and there's a pun intended there.
There's a scary hiring story. I think everybody's probably got one, and we'll have to have a moment in the chat later where everybody shares their scary stories. But I'll share one of my scary hiring stories during that final portion there before we get into the data. And then we'll wrap up. We'll do some giveaways, all that to finish us off today. Again, approximately 2 hours since our target, and we're already over our opening, George. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into this, and we're going to have some fun. I'm going to bring up our first conversation with Ryan Henning. All of you out there, we see you in the chat. Continue chiming in. Continue sharing your takeaways, your questions, all those things. I believe Ryan's actually here in the chat with us today. He had told me he was going to try to join. So if he is, he'll give a shout there on LinkedIn, and then we can make sure and just feel welcome as part of the community. So without any further ado, let's jump into this first conversation with Ryan Henning. Hey, everybody. I'm so glad you're here today with us for this event, and I'm excited for our kickoff conversation today. I'm talking with Ryan Henning, and we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of what's working right now within talent acquisition, what's not, some of the things we can do about it, and really, honestly, I'm just so excited for you to hear from Ryan. Number one, he's got an incredible radio voice, and number two, he's super smart, super nice, and just an all-around good guy. Ryan, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to thank you first for the compliments. You're too kind, and really happy to be here. Happy to excited to partner with you. You always bring great insights and knowledge and connectivity in this topic and in our field and in this space. So thank you for having me. I'm honored. So thank you.
Goodness. Well, you're going to have to bring it now. Like you said, all the nice things. Before we get into some of the good stuff, we're going to be talking about, again, some of the big challenges right now. We're going to talk about a couple of the data points we saw in the research. I want to get your live take on those, sort of the man on the street, how you feel about these as an executive practitioner, those sorts of things.
Yep.
Before we get into all that, would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ryan Henning. Most recently, I was Director of Talent Acquisition for Highmark Health, where I oversaw recruiting from all of our entry-level hourly roles through director level and some executive level leader roles. Also had responsibility for our early careers talent recruitment. Think not only your traditional internships and those types of roles within the corporate space, but also our entry points into the hospital. So some of those pathway programs and some of those things. But for better or for worse, I've been in talent acquisition and HR in the healthcare space for almost 20 years. Spent about 10 of those years with United Health Group, leading talent acquisition for our high volume service center operation spaces, as well as our revenue cycle consulting group. Spent a couple of years leading talent acquisition for Astellas Pharmaceuticals. And then in the hospital space, led talent acquisition for Rush University Medical Center here. So a large academic medical center here in the city, focused on leading TA for essentially all areas for our main hospital downtown, including the university and one of our suburban hospitals, for really all areas with the exception of physician recruitment. That was a little bit separate. And also during that time too, I'm not an L&D guy by trade, but I had responsibility for leading our learning and development team for quite some time as well. So kind of grew up as a recruiter. TA is my background, but I always tell people I've had exposure in other areas of HR to make me, I'll say, somewhat dangerous and or knowledgeable in those.
Know enough to be dangerous.
Right?
Levers that I can pull outside of the recruiting bubble, all that fun stuff. Well, cool. So before I get into the other things, actually, I'm kind of curious. of all the things you could be doing, why is TA where you ended up? What about it like pulled you in or kept you here?
Yeah, really good question, Ben. I will say, so actually way back in high school and college, I was a front desk clerk for Holiday Inn. So hospitality is the route that I thought I wanted to go. And I fell into recruitment by accident after my sophomore year in college, had an opportunity to have an internship in the staffing space. And for me, I really enjoyed that opportunity. And I felt that, so I was a business and marketing major. I felt that talent acquisition and recruiting was a nice blend of bringing my natural people skills, sales skills, hospitality skills to the table. But whether you're recruiting someone for their first job, their 10th job, whether it's an entry-level job, a mid-level career job, or an executive level job, you are impacting someone's livelihood, their family's livelihood. And to me, that's important. And I started early in my career in the tech space, telecom, IT, and then ended up at United Health Group in 2007 and have just stuck in healthcare. I can go be a talent acquisition leader anywhere in any industry. But for me, it's about the work in healthcare, the difference, whether you're on the payer side or the provider side or the pharmaceutical side, you are making a difference. And I guess for me, that stems back. My mom was a practice manager for an orthodontist for 35 years. So I guess I always had kind of that natural inkling to healthcare, and again, have found myself in this space for almost the past 20 years.
Oh, tremendous.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's so much fun. I love hearing everyone.
And,
and I asked it slightly different for you. I'm usually like, what got you into this? And like, what kept you in this? Right. And you had a good answer for that one too. So it's a great all around piece there. And I bet people in the audience can probably really resonate with some of the things you shared there around the meaning behind it, the impact behind it, not just filling another job, right? But helping to impact someone's life for the better and making their dreams come true from a career perspective. That's really cool.
Yeah. Again, whether it's their career or again, especially in the healthcare space, it's our members, it's our patients. It's so not only are you helping the employee, but the employee, the work that they're doing, whether it's patient facing or behind the scenes, you're making a difference in people's lives. Yeah,
I just had a comp conversation with someone today that was also in the healthcare space. And that's what we got around to. She's like, what is the right way to incentivize the right behaviors that are going to make sure that patient walks out healthy, satisfied, right? All the sorts of good outcomes you're looking at there. So it's a really cool connection point. So let's get into the bits here. So to start us off, let's bring a doom cloud for a minute. What's the biggest challenge facing talent acquisition right now? And you're
I have to pick one.
I mean, if you've got a couple that are tying up there, vying for the top slot, you're welcome to bring a couple. But I'd love to hear, like, what are some of the big challenges that you see from your perspective?
I think a couple of different things, Ben. I think we are still in a little bit of that really unique labor market now where unemployment rate is still hovering between 4 and 4.5% across the national average, depending where you're at. And so there are certain areas where I still feel it is absolutely still an employee's market. But also, too, we have some of those things in the healthcare space where trying to find nurses, while it's gotten a little bit better since we've come out of the COVID water slide, finding nurses, finding those allied health roles, your lab techs, your med techs, your farm techs, those types of things. I think there's still that war for talent in finding the right people to fill those roles. But then on the flip side, I feel from a candidate perspective, you have a lot of candidates who feel disengaged about the job market right now, job hunting, because again, while AI is an amazing tool and so great and so helpful for so many things, and people will say the robots are coming. No, the robots are here. Like they're here, they're embedded in our work, and they're an important part of the work. I think candidates are just disengaged when they go on LinkedIn and see over 100 applicants for a job, or they see, hey, my profile's been viewed over 150 times, yet I haven't gotten a nibble, a bite, an email, a ping, or they feel that they submit their online application, which some of those are arduous to begin with. So someone goes through all that work to submit an online application, and then they never hear anything. And then maybe weeks later, they'll get the thanks but no thanks letter. And it's like, you never even talked to me. How do you even know that I'm a fit for these roles or not? So I think that's the weird, I'll say, kind of dichotomy that we're facing in today's talent market as talent acquisition leaders.
Goodness. And we could pick any one of those, right? Yeah. And then delve into it for the entire time we have today. Really quick, I'll give you one quick stat that I haven't shared with you yet, and I may share with the audience later on. But when we asked when we ask employers about candidates right now, again, there's this weird sort of, yeah, we need them, but also they're being kind of strange over there.
Right.
There's this dynamic happening. We ask employers, and they're saying that candidates increasingly are misrepresenting themselves. It's always been a problem, right? Someone who changes their job on their resume from member of a team to leader of a team, those little adjustments they're making there to make themselves look better. But when we ask employers why they think that is, the number one reason is sort of what you were saying there. Like the candidates just feel this pressure to try to stand out right now. And even if it's kind of in a pushing them across the line a little bit, they're trying to find anything they can do to stand out, to try to be appealing to an employer. So they're leaning into that. And so to me, that's like, it's a reality, it's a challenge, it's a problem, but employers, like people like us, Ryan, are trying to give them a little grace, saying, I can understand that's a really hard place to be in. And they're trying to just find a way to make it work. That doesn't mean it's less difficult for employers to navigate all that. It just is like, we're giving a little bit of grace where we can. So that piece. And then the other part, you talked about the labor market. I heard someone talk about it maybe a year ago now, but they said something that stuck out to me because healthcare is like a bubble that sort of kept the hiring going. And
it really has, yeah.
And they're like, listen, for sitting jobs, it's been kind of flat. But for standing jobs, like many of the people who are doing those roles you talked about a minute ago, the techs, everything else, like those are standing jobs. Those jobs are the ones that are in demand. And whether it's in healthcare or in other spaces, the standing jobs have stayed pretty high, pretty consistent. The recruiting companies I know have made any money in the last year are doing it around some of the frontline or high volume types of roles, because that's where the opportunities really are. So I'm with you on all that. And there's a couple nerdy data points to back up what you were sharing there.
Love the data points. Absolutely. Love the data. Yes.
Always. So I'm going to let you be the professional commentator for a second. So I'm going to give you a couple different data points we found in this piece of research that we just finished, and just let you comment on it, share on it, react to them for me if you don't mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So the number one problem, here's our first one. The number one problem companies tell us they're trying to solve right now is picking the best and most suitable candidate for the job. Many of them are not saying that the biggest thing is to get more people in the funnel, to try to get their brand figured out. It's like, we're just trying to pick the best person out of all the ones that are out there right now. That's a biggest challenge. What are your thoughts on that?
I pause and do the collective sigh, Ben, for a couple of reasons. I think one, and this is kind of the age-old problem or nut to crack within talent acquisition and as hiring leaders, that perfect or best candidate is so subjective. And I've said this thousands of times over my career, there is no such thing as the perfect candidate. And even growing up as a recruiter, I started out in tech recruiting, right, Ben? I didn't know anything. I was recruiting for Microsoft, Cisco, IBM engineers. And I learned enough as I was working with my hiring managers and leaders to do that intake session. To me, that is so important. When we in talent acquisition, the recruiter gets a new rec, they have to have that intake session with the hiring manager to really understand, is this what you need? Is this the right job profile? Are we going after the right things? What are the nice but not necessaries? What else should I be looking for outside of this to help us get as close to that target as possible? And I would always say, and I would tell hiring managers, I'm sending you over who is maybe hitting on 4 or 5 out of the 6 cylinders or data points that we talked about during our intake session. But here's really why I, as the talent acquisition professional, am making that push for this person. It's still up to you to vet them. And I think that's where hiring managers have to have a clear set of things that they're looking for, a clear set of things that they're looking to flex on. They have to be able to utilize some type of behavioral-based interviewing questions and blend that. And then they have to have the right people involved in their hiring panel to help make decisions. And those people also need to be using some of these behavioral-based questions and blend some of that. And that's not saying it has to be scripted and they can't ask some off-the-cuff questions, or as the interviewer is going, Ben, you as the interviewee may bring up something that me as a hiring manager or part of an interview panel want to glob onto and pull apart a little bit further. But if those foundational pieces aren't structured throughout the process, to me, that's where I've seen the hiring process go awry. And we have those positions that are out there, whether they be a little bit of the niche or diamond in the rough roles, or even for your high volume. You're like, well, Ryan, do I need to do an intake session every time I have a customer service rep opening? No, but then I at least want my recruiter to connect with you as the hiring manager and be like, hey, Ben, last time we worked on this role, these were the things that we looked for. Is it still the same before I go out and post this? Yes, no, hey, let's talk, let's not talk. And to me, Ben, that's the important thing. And it's also getting good feedback from the hiring managers to really let me as the recruiter know, hey, Ryan, I didn't like Susie Snowflake because of A, B, and C. That allows me as your recruiter to continuously readjust and tweak my search on the fly and not wait until I presented you a boatload of candidates or we've had a boatload of people go through the interview process and then have the hiring manager come back and be like, well, I didn't like any of them. Yes. So those to me are some of those foundational pieces. Ben, I don't care for what level of role you're recruiting for, the standing role, which I love, or the sitting back role, like those things have to happen.
I'm picturing a manager in my head as you were saying that part there, Ryan, about like the getting good feedback, because getting the, hey, no to all of these, that's not really helpful. Do you know the bring me a rock exercise? Do you know that?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you and I were sitting out together. Say, hey, Ryan, I need you to go bring me a rock.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go outside, you grab a rock, you bring it. Well, yeah, that's not really big enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So you come back with a bigger rock. Yeah, that's really the wrong color. I wanted it more different color.
Yep.
So you come up with a different color big rock. Like, yeah, but now that one's really rough on the edges. I need it to be smoother. Like, we could do this endlessly.
Yeah.
Right? Because I didn't tell you exactly. I need a rock the size of my fist that is gray colored, that has smooth edges. If I told you that from the beginning, you would have gone out there and got something very close to what I asked for.
Exactly.
But so many of the recruiting people out there are doing this sort of bring me a rock exercise where it's like, well, no, that's not what I wanted. What do you want? Good luck trying to guess what's in my head.
Yeah. And I almost feel now, because Ben, for some of these roles, for some of these areas, whether it might be tech, it might be high volume, one of my recruiters will post a role, and within hours, I'm not even saying a full 24 hours, within hours, they'll have oodles, hundreds of applicants to sift through. And I feel that's where we as TA practitioners can use technology and AI to help with that type of things, but those types of things. But at the end of the day, to your point in that bring me a rock exercise, if I as a recruiter don't have that knowledge from you as a hiring manager and we don't get to some of those levels of specificity, the hiring process is going to continue to just take longer, and there's going to be frustration on part of the recruiter, the hiring manager, and the candidate.
This is going like super in the weeds.
Okay.
Fair warning. But
yeah,
if you are advising someone out there listening in that's like, we really don't do good intakes, is there like one question that you're like, well, make sure you ask this one question if nothing else, or make sure you clarify this one thing if you don't clarify anything else? Like, is there one thing that you could give them that would help them to improve the quality of those interactions? Because I remember the first time I happened into doing those, because I had roles that were so technical, I didn't understand them. So it's like, in order to help you, I need you to explain, what do these three things mean? Because they don't even, I think they're English, but I don't know what they mean. And so I had to do that naturally as part of my work. And so other people may not do that sort of thing to standard practice. Yeah,
absolutely, Ben. I think for me, it's asking hiring managers, what is the most important technical skill this person needs for the role? Like we all know job descriptions and job profiles, and sometimes they look like the kitchen sink, which that's a whole nother topic for maybe a whole nother session.
Got it.
Yeah. But what is the most technical skill, the most important technical skill to you as the hiring manager? What is the most important cultural or team fit skill for you and this culture, your team? And then is there anything else that is mission critical for me as a recruiter looking at this role? Like and there's all the nuts and bolts things, the pay, all of those types of things, right? Like but it's, to me, Ben, it's asking those at least 2, if not 3 clarifying questions. Most important technical skill, most important kind of cultural team fit, company fit skill. And then is there anything else? What's the cherry on top? What's the extra that I can either hunt for, look for, or need to clarify that's going to help this process go as smoothly as possible?
I really like that. I like that a lot. Okay. So anyone out there is taking notes, like I'm taking notes, there's you a good takeaway. If you get nothing else from all the other good things Ryan shares, there's one good takeaway for you on having a better conversation around the intake piece there with your hiring managers. Because guess what? Even that hiring manager that's kind of a little difficult to deal with, they can answer those questions. If nothing else, that gives them a chance to be the expert on that job and play into those sorts of things. So there we go.
We can continue to refine. Yeah, but have to have that foundation. It's like building a house, Ben. You have to have the foundation right. Otherwise, the house is going to cave in.
As someone who is not spatially aware or has any sort of technical skills for building anything,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with your
Like,
answer
oh,
on
trust
that
me,
one.
I'm not the best at that either. But that's the analogy I always use. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So this second one, I sort of teased it earlier, but I want to give it
Yeah.
like straight up and let you respond to it. So when we look at the data, we ask employers about candidates and how
Yeah.
they're representing themselves. And right now, 1 out of 3 employers, like all of you listening to us right now, tell us that they frequently encounter, not just occasionally, not rarely, but frequently encounter candidates who are intentionally misrepresenting themselves. What's your reaction to that?
First of all, Ben, honestly, in 2026, in today's society where we've come with technology and social media, that a third of employers roughly would say that they feel someone is somehow some way misrepresenting themselves. I think part of it, again, without going on a whole nother conversation topic here, is how we live today culturally. We have all built in our personal lives, our professional lives, via LinkedIn professionally, Instagram, Facebook personally, we've all built somewhat of these kind of curated personas of ourselves and of our families. And I think that has naturally bled into the hiring space. But I also feel, because some of the things that we were talking about earlier, candidates feel this pressure, they feel this immense need to get a job, or that AI is going to take their job. And so how can they provide this crafted, perfect answer? They may turn or over rotate, again, AI and using those things to help gather your thoughts, to help with research, to help you build, are all good things, but you have to make it your own and you have to make it authentic. And then also, I think some of it, Ben, is generational, right? I'm a late Gen X guy, but I think your later millennials or your Gen Z workforce now, they've grown up with this. They know nothing different than the iPad, the iPhone, the technology. And so they're almost looking for like that I hate to say easy button, but to craft. And so as a TA leader and as a business leader, and we have to almost take a step back as like, well, is this now just kind of the new norm? And again, it goes back to those conversational skills of, all right, Ben, I'm looking at your resume here. Let's talk about your work. Let's ask some of those questions so that I, as the hiring manager or interview panelist, can help pull through some of those different things. And yes, part of a job interview, I think we've always been told this, whether it's in our age today or 25, 30 years ago when you were looking for a job, it's your opportunity as a candidate to sell yourself and put your best foot forward. So people naturally want to do that, but perhaps they're over rotating on how they do that today.
Yeah, you give it some grace there. I like it.
Give it some grace, but it's also on us as hiring leaders we have to filter through some of that. And I will say, right, like if someone is blatantly like they were a widget maker and they said that they were
I'd be a great heart surgeon, Ryan. Yeah. Believe me. Trust me.
Like that just doesn't jive. Like that's not okay. All right. But I think that's where we as recruiters, as TA professionals, right? It starts with us. The buck stops or starts with us, if you will. So the recruiters have to be savvy enough to pull some of that apart. But then it goes back to what we were just talking about, Ben. If the recruiter doesn't know, at least in the ballpark, the type of rock it is that you need as the hiring manager, they're going to be searching way outside the ballpark, and we're going to continue to spin, and not in a good way, as we go through the hiring process.
The other part of that occurs to me as you're sharing, the other part that occurs to me is we sort of half joked, half very serious about it a minute ago about how job descriptions themselves are not really good anyway. And so that's almost like its own version of an untruth, because you're like, oh yeah, the right person's going to have all 14 of these essential required skills and can't be missing any of them, or they won't be able to do the job. And you're like, in reality, the guy that's doing it right now, they don't have those skills either. Right. But here they are doing the job. So,
or it falls underneath the tagline that I think almost every JD has is other duties as described. And also touching on that really quick, Ben, I've worked in areas where our job descriptions read at like a master's level. Most people across the US, their reading level is about like a 7th, 8th grade Harry Potter level. And so again, it's up to us as HR functions, comp functions, TA functions, hiring managers to look at those job profiles and job descriptions, and are they even saying and really targeting what we really need for this role? And is it going to resonate? And so I think that's another thing that has to be looked at as well.
For all of us HR muggles out there, we have to make sure we're doing that at the right level.
Well, and because it impacts too, Ben, like using like let's say like an AI tool like Hired Score, right? That is going to be able to help kind of sort through some of those candidates. Well, the AI tool uses the job profile and the job description. And if that's not right, then your house of cards is going to fall down.
I want to give you one more stat that's a little bit more on things we can do as employers and position that a little bit. So we ask employers, of all the things that we do during the hiring process, what is the thing that most damages the trust that candidates have? And the number one answer, probably no surprise to anyone, is a lack of feedback or a lack of communication, right? The resume black hole thing has been around for over a decade and going strong. That's not changing anytime soon, doesn't feel like. But the next question we asked employers is, because of all the constraints you have right now, what is something that you've let go in the last year? The number one answer, Ryan, was candidate feedback, like candidate communications, actually circling back with people. So like, yes, I know that this is poisonous to how people feel about our company. And yet here's another dose is basically how I read that in the data. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Ben, right? At all. Not surprised, but it is that candidate care. And this is something, I guess this is where it pulls back to my days in high school and college as a front desk clerk for Holiday Inn. You wanted every guest to have a positive experience. Mm-hmm. I, as a TA leader, and just also not only as a TA leader, but just to speak well of the company, I want every candidate to have a positive experience. And again, I feel that in today's day and age, right, with so many, for some roles, so many applicants and so many different things, it is hard. But then we have to be mindful of that candidate experience, of providing feedback, of, or at least setting the right stage so that maybe a candidate, they do apply, or they're going to look at that job description, that profile, and maybe if you have a really well-written job description, that candidate might self-select out of that role. And that's okay, because they may not be a fit for it anyhow. But it is up to us in the business and from hiring managers. We need that feedback as to why someone is not a fit, or we as recruiters need to be able to tell candidates, hey, you know what, Ben, your role or your skills and experiences are very impressive, but here's maybe why they're not a right fit for this role at this right time. And it's also timely feedback. And I think if you give people basic, pointed, timely feedback, they don't need a novel. It doesn't need to be something that's overly blown. Most people would take that and be like, I at least appreciate that. I get it. I'm going to try again. But we want every candidate to walk away with a positive experience, because they may be a fit for another role in another area of the company, a fit for another role down the line, or someone in their network, their friends, their family, their school, their church, whatever, might be a fit. And we want that good word to be out there and not be the negative voice.
Okay. I've got a fun curveball for you here to wrap us up. So I keep meaning to have this handy when I need it. So I've got a magic wand.
Okay.
I don't have one, but let's imagine you did. And you got to wave that magic wand and change something around or about talent acquisition and how it's done today. You could change it, whether it's the perception of it, whether it's a process, whether it's something else. It doesn't matter to me. What would be the thing you would change and why?
It's a really good question. Not everywhere, and not for every role, and not for every area of the business in which I've worked or supported or partnered. I think, unfortunately, talent acquisition is still a little bit of an afterthought. There's all this planning, all this work, all the things that business leaders, again, I don't care if it's on the payer side, the provider side, the pharma side, there's all this work that goes in. And then we as talent acquisition are often brought in at the last minute. Hey, Ryan, here's your order. Just go
make that happen.
We just go, Ryan, go find me a rock. Like, hurry up, go do it. And we can have that seat at the table, not only to understand what the true business needs are, what the opportunities are, where the business needs to take direction, get some of that knowledge, some of those intrinsical things that you just naturally kind of pick up there. But then we as talent experts and people who have a pulse on the market can help provide some feedback or help provide direction. And it becomes more of a joint process. And then as a TA leader, we can start to be more proactive. I can start to pepper my team with things to be able to do or to look for, or to build out that sourcing strategy, or to, especially in healthcare now, we're dipping all the way into the high school levels to gain talent. But that's a long game, Ben. That's not an easy button or magic wand play. And so we have to be able to work together talent acquisition leaders with business leaders to make sure that we're building that infrastructure to be able to go and recruit. So to me, if that was the one magic wand thing I can do, would just be to have more of that, I'll say, seat at the table, brought in more early and often, be more of that strategic partner with these business leaders as needed as we go about the hiring process.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I've loved this so much. I've gotten some great notes from the conversation, just enjoyed it so much. As we're wrapping up here, if someone wants to connect with you, wants to follow you, wants to say, hey, Ryan, I'd love to see you there, is LinkedIn the best place to do that?
LinkedIn is the best place to do that. Please send me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to share more personal information as well, email, cell phone, all that fun stuff. But LinkedIn, always the best place to contact me and to start to build those connections and relationships. Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you again for taking the time to join us today. It's such a joy to have a chance to chat with you again. Appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thanks, Ben. Likewise, I always love doing these types of things. And again, I feel you and I can talk for hours about so many of these topics. I really do. I love the talent acquisition in HR place. I love the healthcare industry. There are so many great things that are happening and just always happy to do these things. So thank you really for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Excellent. To everybody else out there, stay tuned for more good stuff. Coming right up. Coming right up. All right. Goodness. That was so much fun. Ryan is number one, great voice. Told you, George. But he also has this just like vibrant approach. Loved hearing his story about why and how he got into it and then got stuck with the world of talent acquisition, and then hearing some of his stories there. And I know that for you, a big thing is purpose and mission and those sorts of things tying back to your work, and him talking about being in the world of healthcare. When we were talking before we actually started recording that session, he was like, listen, this matters so deeply that someone has a good experience because as a candidate, because I want them when they have an issue with their parent or when their child is supposed to be born, like we want to go to that system because they're good to us, right? They were good to me as a candidate. And it's like, you forget sometimes that connection there. So we had a great discussion around that. Any of the comments, any of the pieces in there that stood out to you in that conversation, George, or anything from under the audience has been super active. There were some really good comments too coming in. Anything for you that stands out?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I think it was Emily Leonard, it was a couple of comments that I actually saved to kind of go back over, because I think there's some interest that we're going to be talking about later on about the candidates, and whether it's a robot or whether it's a real application, whether it's a real candidate, right? This battle of who is real on which side of the table is very interesting, and it's almost as if, as Emily said it best, it's almost as if it's become a game to some of the candidates, and I think a lot of it goes both ways, right? Like with a lot of false advertisement and a lot of false posting on the jobs that can go anywhere. That's been a big struggle. Another thing, Ben, I come to think about is at what point do candidates get frustrated with the whole "you didn't get the job, but we're going to keep it on file" game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it becomes a game on both sides where they never hear back from the companies and they hear these different things. And so I think more than I agree with Emily, it's almost like a battle of who is real, right? If we could put TA on a TA island, like, and really try to say, like, who's the survivor of this? Like, what is real? And we see some of those things, like which one of these look relevant, which one of these postings are actually AI versus human posting these things. There's this great disadvantage almost, or deception of what is real. And I think as much as it's frustrating for recruiters, also the candidates are like, was this real? Did I just waste my time uploading and creating this resume and filling out an application and never hear anything back?
Yeah.
And so it's this discernment that we have to have on both sides of the table. And yes, is it a game? Unfortunately, but who's trying to play it is the patient game. And so you have people that are looking for jobs, but they're tired of submitting and not hearing back, the communication gap that we talk about as well.
Yeah, we've seen this over the last 2 years in different pieces and different facets. One of the things that we actually had to trim out from some of the research, share later because of just time limitations, was when we ask employers, what are some of the ways that candidates can game the system, right? And some of it's just, we can use AI to help me with my application, not a big deal, all the way up to the form that some of the people were talking about, where they're using AI to actually cheat and do the assessment and try to get in, even though they don't deserve it. They're not qualified for it. And unfortunately, as an HR community, as a talent acquisition community, we surveyed 1,000 different companies. Only 15% of them could identify all the ways that candidates can use AI. And so we measured that last year and it was 13%. So that tells you we're not as a group getting smarter. That's the right answer to the test, is that answer, all the above. And we only had 15% of us that can figure that out. So there's a very real challenge. And again, seeing some people talk in the audience, I think, that comment from Emily where she said, the person submitted 2 different resumes. I interviewed them back to back, week to week, and realized it's the same person, but they'd used a completely different resume, everything else. And that cuts over the line. And employers are worried about that sort of thing because we talked for a long time about the risk and the cost of ghosting. What if George says yes, doesn't show up on day one? What's the cost to us as a business? There's a lot of cost to that. There's even more cost when George turns out to be Joe, and Joe actually can't do any stuff that George could do when I interviewed. And we get into this issue where the person has to be moved out of the business after sucking the team dry and using up all the extra bandwidth for the management and the people around them and all that stuff. So yeah, we could spend a lot of time kind of harping on that one. It's a very real problem. I actually had a podcast. I'll post it in the chat in just a minute, the link to that. Just did a podcast recently with Terry Terhark about some of the ways that you can catch fraudulent candidates in the hiring process, from seeing the applications coming in to how we screen and interview, some of the things that you can do, very tactical and specific, to catch people that are trying to do things that are shady, we'll call it. And so usually when they see a company that has some of those things in place, they'll avoid them entirely because they know they can't trick you. But if you just keep trying to do hiring like you always have, that's when we get caught. And I would be guilty of the same thing, getting caught by those things, because I want to rely on my experience and what I know works, and you can't do what you've always done anymore. It's not going to work. All right, goodness. I want to spend all the time just talking with you, George, and chat with the audience. So many good comments here, but we're gonna move to our next conversation. So I'm talking with Josh Millett. He is the CEO of Criteria Corp, and we're going to be talking about some of these things here. We're talking about some of the ways that we're seeing in the data that companies are struggling with this. So I don't want to lead the witness too much. We're going to jump into that conversation. You'll hear another perspective on this and some of the ways that companies are using things like, hey, you know what? If George is going to do this on the job, I'll let him practice that in the interview and see if he can really do it. Seems very logical, and yet it's not a common practice. So let's jump in with Josh. Everyone, welcome to the session today. I'm so excited to be here with you and to be here with one of the gentlemen I've known for quite some time here in the space, Josh, with the team at Criteria. We're going to be talking about one of the problems that I think every employer is worried about right now, which is candidate quality, looking at resumes as a declining indicator of proficiency and all those sorts of things. Josh, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Thank you, Ben. Great to see you again and to be here with you.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today. Before we get into some of the good stuff we're talking about around some of the new data that we've been collecting together, would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, so my name is Josh Millett. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Criteria. Criteria is a talent success platform. So we help our customers make better talent decisions, primarily hiring decisions. So our platform includes a pretty comprehensive assessment portfolio, as well as AI-based interviewing tools and also post-hire development tools as well.
Excellent. All right. So I've already sort of set the audience up. I've baited them with this, Josh, already, because you and I know this is a hot topic. So what we're seeing in the data, we're hearing this over and over. Resumes are getting progressively worse. Companies are getting more of them at the same time, and they're not really good as a selection tool. And there's always been they've never been perfect, but at least we've been able to put up with it for a while, it feels like. And you and I were talking before we started recording about how this is an emerging problem that every company is struggling with because the quality issue is there. What's your take on that? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing and seeing that in basically virtually every customer conversation I have. A lot of frustration and shoulder shrugs these days in terms of how to deal with both the incredibly high volumes of resumes, but also the fact that a lot of them look perfect these days because they've all been put through ChatGPT or some kind of AI-based enhancement tool. And so there's really a frustration of, like, as you mentioned, there's long been a recognition of sort of the one-dimensionality, I think, of resumes and the fact that they don't always contain the strongest signals. But I think we're seeing an inflection point where people are like, kind of, what do we do with this? What should we even be using them at all? the joke around criteria, Ben, is that I've been saying that resumes are dead for 20 years and I might finally be onto something. So, but I do think we've seen that this progression, the first stage of it maybe was pre-AI, when skills-based hiring, the whole movement was sort of a recognition that, wait a minute, these tools are a little bit limited in terms of the signals they provide. But now with everyone using resume enhancement, on one level, hey, that should be good for candidates, right? There's these tools that are ubiquitous and free, or mostly free most of the time. And yet it becomes harder and harder to compete because everyone else is using them. And then from the employer's perspective, at the same time, you have like, and I think we're earlier in this wave actually versus resume enhancement. You're having folks starting to use these like agentic auto apply tools, like find me sales jobs that look like this.
Yes.
And that's creating, again, that's good on one level for the candidate, but for the employer, what you're stuck with is this massive pool of resumes that are increasingly undifferentiated. And that's sort of where the frustration comes, is there's just so much noise and so little signal there.
But you see some of the funny news stories about AI failing like miserably in some hilarious ways. And one of the leaders I was talking to just the other day, she was telling me, we opened this position for like a director of tax compliance. So a very specialized, very key sort of role for their business. And she said, we're flipping through the resumes and there's a person that is a farmer, a literal farmer. They farm. That is their entire job. That's all their entire work history. And they applied for this executive level senior director of tax compliance role for this organization. She said, I can only imagine that either they accidentally did that or some AI thing did that for them, because there's not a chance in the world they could ever do this job. And so it's a couple different things there. And then we get into like the creepier, even creepier than that, it feels like, is when people are using tools, just like you and I are recording this right now, and they'll use these tools to give them the answers during the test, basically give them an answer that looks good, sounds good during the interview, so they can cheat and sound competent even when they're really not. So there's a whole range of things there. To go back to the resume specifically, though, so we work on this piece of research around resumes are dead. I think you're on something there, Josh. One of the things we found for all of you in the audience out there listening in, 1 out of 3 employers, all of you out there, are very confident. Only 1 out of 3 employers are very confident that a candidate's resume accurately represents what they do. Just 1 out of 3 of us think that's true. And as someone who's recruited, I would probably agree with that. And yet 2 out of 3 employers use a resume screen as their very first step. So as you said, Josh, it's like, we know there's a problem, but we're not quite sure what to do yet with that. And so companies are kind of stuck, they feel like. So what do you think companies should be thinking about? How do you see them starting to shift and change away from this old standard of the resume as the way to make a choice to other sorts of selection tools that are more valid, more scientifically proven, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, right? I think everyone's losing confidence in it, and yet it's still the case that it's embedded very top of funnel, typically, right, in virtually everyone's process. And look, it's like on the face of it, it's a system that worked pretty well, like reasonably well for 70 plus years, right? Like a candidate writes a 1-page summary of who they are, right? And then an HR person can have a very brief overview. It's efficient. You write this 1 page, you can use it for lots of different jobs. So yeah, I understand why it had the appeal it did for so long, even when its like limitations were pretty apparent. But the system is breaking down for all the reasons you mentioned, and this sort of collective consensus that, oh yeah, resumes are still the best way to do things is like evaporating pretty quickly. And of course, I think what is needed is alternative kind of talent signals. We need to be looking for different ways to get talent signals around what people are capable of, hopefully forward-looking ones, not just like what they've done in the past and where they went to school, but what they're capable of, what they can do. I think on one very sort of macro level, what's happening is that the paradigm in hiring is going to shift and is shifting, and probably needs to shift from a tell me what you can do to a show me what you can do kind of approach. If you think about, I have kids who went through kindergarten, first grade a couple years ago, and it's the wisdom of first graders, right? Like show is greater than tell, right? The show and tell, the lame part is always the tell. Like we should just get rid of the tell and focus on the show, right? Just show it.
Yes.
Yeah, like no one cares when Susie's talking about her pet snake. When she shows the pet snake, then you've got the crowd is on the edge of the seat. And I think we're moving to that kind of paradigm of like, show me that you're job ready, right? Demonstrated abilities, traits, that kind of thing. And so finding those reliable talent signals is the key to really unlocking talent matching at scale. And we're actually very optimistic. You talk about all these complications from AI. I'm very optimistic long term about the potential of AI to really improve talent matching at scale. But we've got to train it on the right stuff. And like anything, it's a garbage in, garbage out scenario. If you don't put good data in that predicts stuff, then you're just going to be scaling bad habits. And so that's what I feel like needs to happen for us to get there, is to use better talent signals. And obviously I'm a little biased, but I think that's where Criteria can help.
Well, I would agree though, but you look at any of the science, the actual data on this over the last 50 years, and unstructured casual interviewing, not a great predictor of who's going to be a good fit, right? It predicts whether I like you or not, basically, but that's all it predicts based on how that conversation goes.
Yeah.
Using someone's GPA, not a great fit. I saw a piece posted the other day from an association of higher education, like an association around that, and they're saying we're hearing from more employers using GPA, and I'm like, no, come on, we need something better. But they're in this time where they're struggling with signals. So Josh, they're like, I'll cling to anything. If you're drowning, anything looks like it's going to save you, they're going to grab those things.
Yeah.
Part of the conversation just this week at an event I was at, we had a roundtable of different CHROs, and we were supposed to be talking about like the agentic workforce and all those very technical things.
Right.
We spent the first 10, 20 minutes, Josh, talking about how early career talent doesn't have the human skills, like the social skills that they really need. And if those companies had a way to find those people, they would hire them like that and teach them everything else they need to know technically, but they need those people that have the skills to interact with others. Yeah. Are you hearing from employers that are looking for those kinds of things too, around like, again, not just can you do the technical parts of it, but how do you do them? What does it feel like? What's the interaction look like some of those sorts of things?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think Criteria, we talk about this concept of work 4.0, right? Which is how AI is going to impact workforce organization and the way that organizations sort of divide up work. And you think about the parts of a person's job that may increasingly be augmented by AI. And so what remains, what's the essentially human element that will always be there? And for me, I keep coming back to like the durable skills. Some people call them soft skills. I don't like that term because it's very demeaning. It's actually the most important skills. It's always been the most important skills. But especially in the age of AI, it's like you think about all the parts of the job description of a salesperson, for example. You need to have these 10 things or competencies. And some of those will stay in that role. Others will fall by the wayside because they can be done by AI. And then a new set of capabilities, maybe specifically around interacting with agentic approaches, are going to come to the fore. And I think what's core and what remains is those durable, AKA soft skills, things like critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, right? The ability to manage and interact with other humans, judgment. I think those are increasingly going to come to the fore as the must-haves across a lot of different job families.
And see, going back to the very first part of our conversation on that, the resume doesn't convey those things you just mentioned very well.
That's
I
right.
can say I'm adaptable. I can say I have critical thinking skills. I can say lots of things on a resume, but that either comes true or falls apart, right? As you start to pressure test that. And it's really hard to do that when you are looking at this giant stack of resumes to get through that. So let's talk about some of the practical parts that don't matter, if you don't mind, because I think you have this really interesting seat where you're seeing companies that are at the forefront of, let's rethink this whole screening thing. Let's figure out a better way to do this. So do you have any examples that you could share of like jobs that they're trying to hire for and the way they've changed it up away from the resume, or specific types of approaches that other companies out there listening right now might hear themselves or see themselves in those examples and be like, we have that same kind of problem? Anything to share there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many kind of customer examples I can cite. And these are obviously conversations I have every day, but I'll share a couple maybe that are exemplary. You mentioned that when you see these things like adaptability on a resume, you really don't know what to do with them, right? And I think like what strikes me about that is that the resume is a really flat. It's a very one-dimensional. Even if the quality of the information was good, it's still very flat and one-dimensional. And what we do, what we're all about is like helping employers have a more multi-dimensional view of what a person is capable of. And one of my favorite brands in life, but also one of our favorite customers, I know you're not supposed to have favorite customers as a CEO, but is Patagonia, the company. And I can say this, she was on a webinar with us, the people leader there, Karina, one of the people leaders over there. She has a great phrase for how she describes kind of the approach we take, which is that criteria and tools like it allow her to see the whole person, right? Whereas you're getting a much flatter view from a resume. And it's also very backward looking, right? Yes. Whereas if you kind of construct a profile, especially given how fast job requirements and jobs themselves are changing from a skills profile perspective, being able to get a view of what someone might be capable of in the future becomes incredibly important. And so I think like taking that view that like nothing you can find out about a job seeker or a candidate in the hiring process is perfect, right? Like, yes. Unfortunately, it's like we don't have a perfect, complete picture, right? Hiring is like a partial information game, right? It's like poker. It's not chess, right? You don't see everything. I'm a poker fan and a very mediocre chess player, so I prefer poker. But you don't have all the information you ideally need. But it's about getting more of the relevant information and using the signals you do have to make better decisions, knowing that you don't have all the information you'd ideally like to have to make perfect decisions. And so I think we see a lot of customers sort of taking that view that I know this is a hard problem, and the better approach is using more different data sources and more different sort of talent signals to inform my decisions, recognizing that perfection is not possible.
There are like 15 things I want to unpack from that, Josh. Goodness. Perfection is not possible. I think that's every hiring manager needs to hear that and have that stamped on the top of the bottom of the rec before they open that, because they always imagine, right, we'll find that perfect person out there that has all the skills I want and no downsides.
That's
they don't have any weird quirks, any issues. Like they're always going to be perfect. And that's not true. I want to go back to the poker thing. When I think about the hiring process, like there's a lot of people bluffing in there, Josh. They're bluffing. They have nothing in their hand. And they are hoping no one finds out that they can't, there's nothing that, that's as much poker as I know. Okay. I use the one phrase that I'm able to use and I'm out. So you would whip me at that if we ever played. One other thing I want to pull on that I've never thought about, but as you said it, I was like, this makes total sense. The world of performance management has changed a lot in the last 10 years. A big change is it went away from just looking at what you did in the past to how we set you up for success in the future. And I feel like some of the assessments, some of the realistic job previews, like those things you can put around a candidate aren't just about showing what you did, but show me how we can equip you for this role, or show me what sort of things, success you can achieve in this role. And to me, that seems like an opportunity to really play into what candidates are looking for. They don't want to throw the resume in and hope for the best. They would love a chance to show what they're made of and be picked or not picked based on that. That's what our data shows over and over again.
That's right. I think two points to hit on there. One is actually our Chief Technology Officer, Chris Dayton, spoke about this subject at Davos actually a couple months ago, is that because of the velocity at which job descriptions are changing and are going to change in a sort of AI-enabled world, you can't use static credentials anymore. You have to have a view of dynamic, like growth potential, right? Because there's that old statistic about my oldest son's 13, and by the time he graduates college, like 70% of the jobs that exist today either won't exist or be so different that they have to be renamed, right? Yes. And so the puck is moving. And so again, I come back to durable skills and how to predict performance in a world where the job descriptions are not static anymore at all, right? I think that's one of the reasons the resumes survived for as long as they did, is that job descriptions weren't changing that quickly. And so sort of a one-dimensional view of like, have you done a job a lot like this before? It wasn't such a bad approach to take, right? But it's really breaking down now, I think.
Okay, goodness. I want to unpack this for like the next half hour with you and keep going deeper, because there's so many different things in here. We're going to make sure, and once this research is live, that we're working on with the team behind the scenes, we're going to make sure and share that back out with anyone that wants to see it that's here at the session today, because it's super compelling. It goes into all the things we're talking about, deeper stats, data. So if you're one of those companies that's like struggling with this, not sure what to do, number one, you're in good company. You're not alone. There's lots of people also facing that. But there are some people that are going beyond the resume, as you just gave a great example of Patagonia, that are looking at, there are other signals we can use to make better decisions and keep that trust and credibility level high with our talent and HR function, because when that stuff starts breaking down, you start to lose some of that hard-earned trust that's so critical for that. So
Yeah.
in the meantime, if someone wants to connect with Criteria, see more about what you're about, see some other customer stories, things like that, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Yeah, so you could go to our website at criteriacorp.com. There's plenty of great content and information there. Or you can find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me directly. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure and drop your LinkedIn handle into the chat here so people can reach out, as well as the link to Criteria. We'll put a QR code up there so people can reach out and connect, learn more about what all the good stuff you're doing here. Again, some great case study stories, examples of other companies solving some of these problems we talked about today. Thank you again for joining me, Josh. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, stay tuned for more good stuff coming right up. All right. Goodness. Love Josh and his insights there. Really thinking through, he had some good quotable quotes, George, talking about how we need to see this, like the poker versus chess analogies. Like hiring is more like poker because you don't see the other side of the board. You can't guess what their strategy is. You don't really know, and they could be bluffing the entire time and not have anything in their hands, right?
When I thought about that, I so one of the questions I always ask, I was never HR, right? I always tell people I was the reason why there was HR. And even as an entrepreneur and having retail stores, one of my questions, I always wanted to be spontaneous within my questions. One of the questions I always asked was, would you rather play chess or checkers, right? And that was more strategic. I wanted to know, were they strategic thinkers or were they like, hurry up and just get this done fast, easy, no strategy at all? And that really separated my salespeople from my technicians, from my managers. And so when he said the whole poker to chess, I think there's a lot of clarity to that. I think there's a lot of truth to that as well. So I really love that analogy on that statement. Criteria, by the way, their QR code is on the board. So if you want to learn more about them, you can check out that site as well.
Yeah, scan that QR code. I mentioned and linked Criteria on the chat on LinkedIn at least, so it's all there for anyone that's wants to connect, follow up, see what they're doing. Again, I'll mention them again later on because we're doing this thing. They have a really cool. They don't have it on the socks that I got from the event. Like some of their colors are very lighthouse colors too, by the way. Like this orange is a little too orange. I'll talk to them about like adjusting that maybe on my behalf. But there's some dark blue, some light blue that fits our colors. But they're doing this like RIP resumes, sort of like a little graveyard scene and stuff, saying if the resume's really dead, what's next? And we could probably have some fun with that if it was Halloween, like zombie candidates or something else. I don't know. Side note for any of you that forget, today is April Fool's Day as we're airing this live. One of my daughters just texted me and said that the bus she's on a field trip on was in a wreck with a car. And I called her during the break. That was off camera. And she was like, oh, it was a joke. So don't get caught today flat-footed like I did. I forgot today was April Fool's Day, and I should have immediately assumed. I told her, don't joke about stuff like that. You should have told me you dropped your phone in a toilet or something. Like I would have been okay, but not something like that. Anyway, all right, back in it. So some great conversations so far. We have one more interview, and then we're going to get into our final portion, sharing some of the research with all of you. So many good takeaways already from this, and I'm trying to keep notes on mine is here. One more really quick shout out. Jose, I'm loving some of your comments. I don't remember seeing you in the chat before with us, so glad you're here today. One of his, he's quoting Gary Vee, and he said, hey, listen, hiring is guessing, firing is knowing. Like firing and promoting is knowing. Like at that point, you know for sure. So great call out there. I love that quote. Did not hear it before, and so now I'll have to hold on to it. Our next conversation is going to be with Cliff from Phenom. So Cliff, the first time I met him, like we connected, and it was so cool because he and I both have like some mission stuff we do outside of work, just stuff that pulls on our heart that we care about. So we connected around that. And then we got around to AI and all the other things that are changing in the workplace and the workforce. He's going to share some cool mad science with us about some things he's seeing and some ideas there. If you're one of those leaders that's trying to think about how to do this at a broader scale at your company, he'll give you some ideas on how to actually quantify that in an ROI perspective. So, data, we're going to have some fun with it. So all that said, let's jump in with Cliff from Phenom and hear what he has to say. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the session today. We've had some really great conversations already around how work is changing, how hiring is different today than it's been in the past. And we're really having some fun talking to leaders in the space. And I'm so excited to be chatting with Cliff here. Goodness, Cliff, we go way back. Like you and I have had some great conversations about this at conferences, at I Am Phenom, y'all's own conference, like all these different places. And I'm so excited to have a chat here in front of everybody else. Welcome to the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Absolutely. So before we get to some of the good stuff we're going to be chatting about today, AI and the hiring process and everything else, take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please.
Sure. So my official title is Head of Strategy and Futurist for Phenom. I've been with the company for a decade now. I'm employee 21. So I've been here a little while, watched this technology grow. You and I met, gosh, I mean, a long time ago at this point. And it's really been quite an amazing journey watching the transformation that I think in part Phenom inspired. But I think what I love about it is there's so many solutions and options out there for people that weren't available when we started about 15 years ago. And so this is an exciting time for companies like ours and certainly people in the space. There's lots of choice and there's lots of solutions, and that's an exciting thing to be a part of.
One of the things that I've said in the last couple of years is that some people that I've heard from you, I've heard from Mahi and some of the other team there over the years, like they have this big vision for what's possible. And it feels like the technology is now catching up to making some of those vision pieces actually happen. And to me, that's just an exciting, like front row seat to be able to see that play out and work. So it's been really cool. I want to talk to you about AI, which is what everybody's like kicking around in the market right now. But I know that Phenom's been doing some really cool stuff on that front. You have this pretty cool vantage point where you're talking to customer advisory boards, different leaders at different companies, things like that. What are really the biggest changes you're seeing when it comes to companies that are actually trying to put this into practice and not just say, oh, that's interesting, but they're doing something useful with it?
Well, I think, and yeah, one of the really fun parts of my role is I'm our general manager of customer advisory. So I get to work with, right now, I think we're up to about 75 executives from around the world that advise Phenom on product and service, market, and obviously the networking that happens in that space is unbelievable. Last year, having the conversation around AI last year with them was more about what is it? How's it going to impact my business? I'm not ready yet, but I do want to learn more. This year has moved more into that. Now I'm really curious. I'm starting to see some success from others, or even in my own organization, we've dipped our toe in and seen some success. But the big thing is about fluency, right? So if you think about how do we make people successful, pairing them with artificial intelligence, how do we amplify human value, bring more value to the work that humans do in organizations by driving outcomes through artificial intelligence? There's a saying that I want the market to change, and it's this saying called human in the loop. And I don't mind human in the loop when we're talking about engineering. That makes perfect sense. When we develop a system or a process, where do humans become part of that process? But that term is being misapplied in the marketplace. And this is what a lot of the leaders I talk to are concerned with. So now we're using a term that I really like much, much better, that I started talking about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, called human in the lead, which is how are humans using artificial intelligence to drive outcomes? Not human in the loop is really human beings checking AI's work. And that's not what we're really here for. So that's the change. How do we, whatever tools we're bringing in, if it's Phenom, if it's something else, it doesn't really matter at this point. What my team does and what Phenom is really interested in doing is building fluency in organizations so that they think AI first. That doesn't mean humans last. What it means is when we have an idea or a problem or something that we're just curious about, can we use AI to help us with that? And what we're finding is about 60 to 70% of the time, you can use AI if you sort of follow this little equation that I came up with, which is be curious, be creative, and then curate. So, and that's it. Just be curious about something, inquire AI, see if it can help you, help create through that as a lens of interrogating your ideas and making them better. And that's the curation piece. So all of that works when you simplify this for people. that this isn't that hard. It's not going to take their job. Our job's going to go away. Yes, some jobs are going to go away. That doesn't mean the work goes away. The work just transforms. So using these tools and leveraging these technologies is a really great way to amplify your value. And that's what leaders want to know. And there's a really good case study out there. Full disclosure, Cisco, Kelly Jones, the CPO at Cisco, Chief People Officer, she published this, had little to do with Phenom. I mean, we're part of their ecosystem. They are a client, but they had started on a journey of transformation about 18 months ago. Look Kelly Jones, CPO up. She published the entire results on her blog, and they just focused on fluency and how that's going to transform the organization. And the results that they got after 18 months are incredible. We don't have time to go into it now, but I use that as a great use case example for people to look up, because she published everything about what they did, what worked, what didn't, and how they built fluency. But that's the conversation right now.
So many good takeaways out of that. I think, again, I'm like quotable quotes, Cliff, already from the conversation. The human in the lead piece is a great one, but I really liked, you just kind of dropped this in and walked away like it wasn't even important, but AI first doesn't mean human last. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a zero-sum game where, okay, fine, all of us have to take a backseat and just resign ourselves to fact checking all the stuff that AI is spitting out. But how do we actually lean forward and look for ways to do our best work, to get joy out of this, those sorts of things? There's a story, a headline I love to show when I'm presenting on this topic, and I show a headline from The Guardian. This is "Job Hunting, the Age of AI is Grim and Dehumanizing." I'm like, okay, how many of you think that when those employers were sitting down to plan for their employer brands this year, you're like, we need some more dehumanizing in our brand? That's a really good priority. Like, no, if they just start using AI tools with no thought behind it, or because someone else is doing it, that may be where you end up. But you're talking about taking this very creative, curious, careful approach to this, where we're not going wild. We're like, hey, this is a problem we have to solve. What are some ways we can try to solve that? Let's iterate, let's test, let's try. Like that sort of approach is going to lead to an outcome where people are actually thrilled and excited about the outcomes and results you're creating, versus just doing what everybody else is doing, just trying to use AI because it's the fad thing today or something else. So I think that was a really good call out for me that I liked.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say, let me just add one thing quickly to that.
Sure.
AI fluency is built through changing the culture. And the big culture shift and the big culture change that really has to happen. And again, it's that AI first thinking about problem solving and being creative and all those fun things. But it really is more about looking at your culture and saying, how can we create an environment where experimentation is accepted? Because it's been a long time since organizations looked at experimentation at the individual contributor level and say, it's okay if you experiment. And it's not about failure. Simon Sinek put it this way. He spoke at our conference, I Am Phenom, and he said something I thought was really brilliant. He goes, I don't talk about fail fast. I talk about fall fast. And then you get back up and you try again and you try again. And I really believe these tools and working from a culture perspective, if you have a culture of experimentation where you accept experimentation, obviously there's going to be some guardrails around that, right? But you can do that. Allow people to experiment, allow their curiosity to run a little bit. You will find people being far more open to using these tools to experiment, to get good at them, to become fluent, and watch what happens to your business. Just watch. It is incredible when you open this up and open that aperture, open that lens as it may be, and allow people just a little bit of breathing room to do something they might not have been able to do before.
I know you are a constant learner yourself. There's a great book that I always recommend called The Idea-Driven Organization that says our people have so many good ideas that are closest to the work getting done, closest to the customers they're serving, closest to the products being built. They have so many good ideas. We have to give them a mechanism to bring those forward. And this may be a sort of forced method to do that, right? Where we give them a chance to do this if we're giving with our culture around that to embrace it.
That's right.
I want to take a little bit of a departure from this other part of the conversation. Maybe it's tied together, because we're seeing this problem where candidates are using AI against employers. You want to put it that way, right? AI generated resumes, synthetic candidates, whatever you want to call it. All those sorts of things are creating some struggles and challenges. I just talked to an employer the other day that was telling me that they've had a number of people in their most recent hiring cycle that they're kicking out because the people are using AI to answer questions during the interviews, and they're catching them doing that. So How big of an issue is this for employers that you are hearing? And if it's an issue, how should we think trust right now?
Yeah, it is an issue, and I think part of it is because the technology it's in its early stages, meaning that it's available, it's so accessible by anyone at this point. And the most obvious, use case in our domain is throw my resume into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, throw the job description there, and make me a match, right? And I don't think people are intentionally creating something that doesn't represent themselves, like they're not lying. I don't believe that. I believe everyone is intended to doing the right thing. But what's coming out of that is everyone becomes the greatest fit for every job. Everyone's an A fit now because you have the ability to do that. So you have to move away from the application layer being like a true first cut. You got to move to the interview stage, right? So we look at this as sort of an arms race a little bit, moving more towards interview. The authenticity becomes a primary currency, and we look for proof of human, right? So you look at integrity insights, you look at cognitive assessments, things of that nature that give people an opportunity to prove their value and their worth, not just be represented on paper. And I think a lot of people want to do that. I think the challenge is that recruiters don't have time and bandwidth to talk to every single person. This is where tools like automated screening and even automated interviewing as a first layer can gather some of that intelligence. And what we actually find is candidates or applicants love that because it does two things for them. Number one, they're not talking to you human, so it lowers the anxiety just a little bit. And number two, they have an opportunity to change their answer before they submit the final thing. So screening or interviewing and say, would you like to take a second or third take on that before we submit? And let me play it back for you. Here's what you just said, right? Are you sure that's what you do? And you can never do that with human beings, right? Like first impressions being what they are, you may not get that chance. And so these technologies really give someone the opportunity, I'm going to use the word again, to curate their responses and really give themselves full agency. So yeah, we're moving more away from the application as being a determining layer, really to saying if you fall within a certain element of matching for the job, you're automatically sent screening or automatically sent the first interview. It could be a one-way interview where you get to represent yourself. So that's where we're going as an integrity insight, and that proof of human becomes more realistic.
So for the audience, for full transparency, I did not give Cliff that option. So he gives one answer today, and that's what you're getting to this question. So there's that.
Raw, right?
Yeah. One of the things I'm thinking of is when we did some research on this a little while back, we asked candidates about their perceptions of that, Cliff, and it's probably no surprise to you. They said, we like this, not so that we like AI better than humans, but we actually like being able to do more than just throw a resume in the pile and cross our fingers and hope. We get a chance to put our best foot forward. We get a chance to, like the cognitive assessment, I get to show what I'm made of. And I get picked or not picked based on that versus picked on some arbitrary search query that the recruiter did looking for a resume out of that stack. And so candidates like the chance to be considered based on their best. And whether this counted or not, they're happier being considered for that versus not.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. We see in the data, people are like, I want the company to see me not just for what I can do now, but for my potential.
Well, you look at the NPS score on the use of an agent for like voice screening, and it's actually significantly higher than that was given by a human being doing the voice screening, a recruiter doing it. And again, I think there's just less anxiety. You can kind of let your guard down a little bit, be yourself, because you're going to have an opportunity to review your answers before things are submitted, and that just gives people assurance that they have. It's kind of like when you talk about like fair credit reporting and some of the things that are going on in that area. We won't get into too deep to what's happening there, but part of the rule is that you have an opportunity to review your information and correct errors. We're doing that in real time with these technologies, and people really respond well to it.
Okay. One of the things I want to ask you is, we talked about AI a minute ago and how companies are implementing it, or at least thinking about it more seriously now. Many of them are trying it out in different layers, and tools like Phenom build that into the system, right? People can access that at a broad spectrum. We also see people that are just using it for more personal productivity sorts of use cases, and neither one of those is a bad thing overall. but I actually saw you post about this on LinkedIn recently, talking about there's a floor and a ceiling as a sort of metaphor for the value of that. Would you take us through that if you don't mind?
Sure. Let me put it this way. People don't fear change. They don't understand the value of the opportunity. And so what I mean by that, when we talk about floor and ceiling, is I want to help people understand what AI can bring them, the bare minimum that it can bring them, and then where is the limit? Like the ceiling can be very, very high depending on your particular scenario. So being able to explain the value in a way that people understand, that's personal to them, removes that anxiety, that fear of these technologies, allows them to start to experiment, again, be curious, creative, and curate their ideas. And when they start to see those results, that means that's the entry point. That's the floor, right? And I created a calculator for this, and you can go to my LinkedIn and see the calculator is pinned to the top of my LinkedIn. It's just, I think visit my website, it'll take you right to it. And it will calculate the floor and the ceiling in terms of the opportunity cost of artificial intelligence. And it allows you to see that in two different ways. And we look at what's called a sideline view, and then I call it a press box view. And the analogy comes from American football, and you could use any team sport on a field. It could be soccer or your international football. Coach is standing on the sideline for years, looking eye level at the field and the players. You only can see so much.
Yes.
Most of the time now, the coordinators of these teams sit up in the press box or in that bird's eye view, and they can see things that they've never seen before. So the floor is basically the sideline. How effective can you be? And you can become more efficient. Like, that's a lot of the sideline view is about efficiency. But the press box view is about revealing opportunities for new outcomes, and that's growth. And so the saying there is efficiency is finite. We need to be efficient, and that gives us revealed opportunities when we become more efficient. And then we move into that press box view, and now we're looking at outcomes that were never possible before, because we can see all the moving parts from a different angle. And we can say, oh, there's an opportunity upfield to the left. Let's send our guys over that way, kind of a thing. And all of a sudden you're scoring 6 points instead of 3. And that's the opportunity. And every individual has that same opportunity just by changing their lens just a little bit. And that's what I think artificial intelligence allows us to do.
Oh my goodness. I want to capture that little bit right there. That was like a master class in the ROI, the impact, the value, the potential, the opportunity. I love that so much. I'm going to like give you this very last question as like put you on the spot a little bit, Cliff. So you've talked about creativity, and being creative is one of the core skills that's going to set people apart long-term, right? We're in this new world. That's going to be a key skill that sets humans apart, and the most successful ones at that. How do you build creativity in yourself, or how do you enhance that skill for yourself, Cliff?
Yeah, for me, I'll give you a very, very simple equation that I learned a long time ago. So I was asked in an interview a couple of weeks ago, what are my most valuable skills that I've had? I'm 55 years old. I've been around the block a little bit. And I went back to my years as a musician. I still am a musician, but I was a touring musician for quite a while. Went to performing arts school. I was a drummer. I toured with some pretty famous bands back in the 80s and 90s. I had a lot of fun doing it. Those skills were the most valuable to me. But the one skill or one ability, I would say, that allowed me to build those skills was my willingness to embarrass myself. So to take a risk, go on stage in front of people, and potentially make a mistake. Or make a mistake with a project, get an idea out there, throw something on the table, find a problem, offer a solution. May not be the right thing, but put yourself out there. My one piece of advice for your audience is be willing to embarrass yourself, because that's where your growth is going to come from. And you'll find new skills that you never knew you had when you're willing to put yourself out there.
I know you know this, or for the audience's benefit, the old quote, to avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. And that's what I was thinking of. You're saying, like, be willing to risk something, because guess what? You may be risking failing potentially, but you could also be risking incredible success. And so you'll never know if you don't take that shot.
That's true.
Oh my goodness. So if someone wants to know more about Phenom, the good work that the team is doing over there, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, I mean, phenom.com is going to obviously be where I would be going. Follow us on LinkedIn or X. TikTok is really good for some folks. All the socials out there. I like LinkedIn the most because we provide so much news and updates and then you hear our customers speaking about us when we start posting this stuff. And that's actually the most important lens is when our customers say, hey, you did this great. You didn't do this great, but we're working on it. You really get an authentic lens of who we are and what we're about and helping 1 billion people find the right work. So that's where I would go to find us. LinkedIn is probably the number one.
Perfect. I'll make sure and get those into the comments here so the audience can reach out, can connect, can follow. Make sure and get yours as well, Cliff, because you mentioned that piece earlier. They need to go check out that blueprint because it's pretty darn incredible. Thank you again for your time today, for joining us. And to all of you out there, stay tuned for more good stuff coming right up.
Thanks, Ben.
Oh goodness. I love Cliff. Oh, George is going to pull the guitar out and you're on mute, George.
Yeah, I was practicing my music. I didn't want y'all to hear, my little jam. I figured me and Cliff would start a band. We'll call it the TA band together or something like that.
Why not? Why not? Oh my goodness. So many good quotes from that. I love it. Like the underrated skill is be willing to embarrass yourself. Just basically be willing to try something. That's when he said earlier, companies have gotten away from comfort with individuals experimenting with things.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, well, we have an R&D department and they'll do that. Or we have an engineering department and they try new things, but you just need to stay in your lane. And we're in this moment now where we're sort of hoping or expecting people to do that. And like, yeah, I haven't done that in a long time. You told me I couldn't, and now I don't know how to do it anymore. Yeah. And restarting that process is not as simple as turning on a light switch and saying, okay, George, you're now extra creative. Go experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. When he talked about that, it reminded me, and the name of the CEO at the time, NASA, and maybe it was you that's telling me the story, but NASA for a long period of time, employees were so afraid of change and innovation and really risking it. And they came in with a new CEO. And really the change of that culture is that we want you to fail. And they literally started celebrating failures because it was only at that moment that they realized embarrassing ourselves, making mistakes is the only opportunity in the door for change and innovations. And so they started celebrating those things. So employees and those in charge were not afraid to really risk it. The other thing that was really interesting, and I loved it because I'm all about perspectives, and he talked about the press box versus the sideline. And I think even those changes, Ben, I think if number one for me, when he was saying that, I'm like, yes. For so long, I'm like, I always use the latter perspective, but I love the sports analogy as a guy who's passionate about sports. My biggest takeaway out of that, Ben, is that at some point in time, we as leaders, we have to be able and willing, not necessarily just be able, but also willing to lift those people up to be able to see that perspective, right? And it reminds me of Tyrese Halliburton here, for the Indiana Pacers back home. The perspective of this year, he tore his Achilles the last game 7 of the NBA Finals. And in this year, he was able to look at basketball, not just from the sidelines without playing. He said that perspective changed him as well. He said, but the biggest impact was when he went to the press box in the suites and was able to see the whole floor from a different perspective. And they gave him a different perspective and a different vision for who he is as a player for the next season. And I think having that, being able to take candidates, being able to take employees to a different perspective so they can see what you see, but also be able to develop from their own eyes something even different, I think was such a huge impact for me. So great takeaway. Thank you, Cliff, for those nuggets.
Yeah, we got someone in the audience is like, we need Cliff to come back longer, basically, so we can get some more. I told you, he is, when we met the first time, like, this guy's something special. And so wonderful, wonderful stuff. All right, man, I put the link in the chat as well on LinkedIn and in StreamYard. So for those of you watching, for the work blueprint that he mentioned, if you want to go and get in the data, get nerdy, that's actually pretty fun to get in there, explore and kick that around. So again, congrats to Cliff for the good stuff he's doing there, and to the Phenom team for supporting today. All right, our last session is going to be a research share that our team put together. So we listen, this is hard to do. I think I'm going to say this on the recording, but it's really hard to do when we have 1,000 different leaders like all of you representing all those companies and 1,000 different candidates around the world telling us their dreams, their hopes, their challenges, their frustrations, and then trying to boil all of that down to how do we share all that in 25 minutes? That's really tough. So we tried our best to pull some of the things we knew would align with the rest of the conversations today, already seeing it in the chat and the comments and the commentary. So it's going to align with all those sorts of things and will give us some other data points to really hold on to and think about as we're going towards the end. At the very end, don't forget, we'll be close on our time, but we will right around noon Central. We'll be wrapping up, maybe a minute or two over. George will be calling out some winners for giveaways, so stay tuned for that. We're giving away the Talent Scarcity book, which is the only book that I've written specifically around recruiting, retention, and how to find great people, how to keep great people. If you're trying to sort through those things, there's some strategies and examples in there that will rock your socks. There we go. So good stuff there. We'll call those out and wrap up with you with our takeaways in just a bit. Without any further ado, let's jump into the research with me, with George, and with Roberta from our team. Here we go. It's such a fun time today going through some of the data, some of the highlights and things. We're going to really dive now deep into the research and show you some of the key things that you need to know, some of the big themes and trends we're watching, as well as some takeaways for all of you to help you actually put this into practice. That's our goal with the research always, is not just to say, oh, wow, that's interesting, or oh, wow, that's scary, but what do we do with it? How do we put that into practice and make it useful? So we're going to be here with you. Our entire team really is here, our research team, and we're going to go through this together, really diving into this. For those of you that don't know, Roberta was on a stream with us recently, but she's actually one of our analysts here on the team, helping out, covering the research. Incredible person and someone that I love and respect. So glad you're here, Roberta. And we all know George, and we all love George as well. So we're going to get into some of the data. And you know me, I love a good story. I'm going to start us off with one that really ties in with some of the other themes we're going to be seeing here around trust gaps, some of the other signal issues, and so on as we go. So, oh my goodness, I'm going back like 15 years now. We were looking for a person to hire for a key role. This was a position that was high profile in the industry. It was going to be a key representative of our company. Like, there were so many things that made this really important. And we ultimately settled on a candidate, but I went back to our second tier candidates to let them know that we had picked someone else and wanted to keep their names on file for future reference. And one of the people, I was like, oh yeah, I realized we're not connected on LinkedIn. So I go and I search their name in Google, going to connect to them there. And the second result in Google was this person's name on LinkedIn. But the first result was this person's very unique name, arrested. And so like, oh no. So I opened this up, and apparently this person had gone to the grocery store, forgot to wear pants, and was arrested for indecent exposure. And it was like a moment from the movies, right? We're about to send this proposal in, this massive proposal to our customer and hopefully get agreed to for this work. This person was listed in our second tier candidates, but seeing this, I'm like, oh gosh, this can't be a name associated with us at all. So I'm running down the hallway like, no, stop, we can't send it. And we avoided any sort of catastrophe there. But I tell that story because, number one, just to remind you, don't hire someone that forgot to wear pants. But number two, that trust piece is so, so important. That was my very first lesson, that what you see is not always what you get. Sometimes people have a different face they're putting out there for you, or they have something they don't want you to know. Their resume doesn't include those things. And so as we talk about trust in the next little bit together as a team and with all of you, we want to tell you about what matters with the gaps there that exist right now. But that is just one very wild example of how trust has to be at the forefront. Because if this person had come to me and said, hey, listen, I had some issues, all that's resolved now, like that may have been okay. But finding it out after the fact created some real weirdness and some other problems that we just wanted to avoid entirely. And we ultimately did. Spoiler alert, we got that contract, we won, and it was like the best recruiting job I ever got to do. So cool. All right, so we're going to talk about some research here. We're going to talk about our brand new TA study. We do this every single spring. This is, I think, year 5, 6. I'm losing count here. We've been doing this study around how recruiting and hiring is changing. And we don't just survey employers like all of you who are listening to me today. We also survey candidates. We want to understand both sides of that picture. And what's wild is we see these big trends year over year that change, but we also break new ground every year. We see some trend that pops up and we go deep into that to understand. And you'll see some of that data in just a moment. So I've got the quick sample sizes here so you can see that. This wasn't Roberta calling 5 of her friends or Ben talking about recruiting experiences years ago, but we actually tapped into a great audience of recruiting leaders, as well as people who are currently looking for work, to really get their take on these sorts of things. And from this data set, we pull all kinds of different insights. And we're going to share some of the highlights with you here, knowing that the full report that'll be coming in the next month or so is going to go deeper into many of these things and some others that we're still uncovering as we speak. So a couple big themes that we want to talk about in the next 20 or so minutes with you. Number one, we're seeing this real issue with trust. Big issues, not just where companies are mistrusting candidates, we'll talk about that, but also where candidates completely distrust the companies that are out there and the way they're positioning themselves overall. Number two on this list, AI. Everybody knows I can't go on LinkedIn. I'm getting shown all these AI things. And so AI use is booming. Everyone's trying it. Some companies are still playing it safe. They're still exploring. And we have some really interesting looks at some of that. Like right now, we're seeing the data that about a fourth of companies are still in that phase where we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to evaluate what's safe, what's smart, what's low risk that we can do. And other companies are like going full speed ahead. So that last piece here around this humanity premium, I know Roberta is excited to talk about it in a little bit around that connection piece, but the human connection is one of the key things that makes a great hiring moment stand out for a candidate or for an employer. When you connect and you feel like this is the right fit, this is meant to be, that moment is so valuable, so powerful. And yet it's being missed in some cases, whether we're using AI tools, whether we're not sure if the person's telling the truth, whether it's a trust issue or something else. There are real gaps that are creating that problem. And so I'm putting it like, if you're seeing marketing out there right now, there's all these hilarious fails where people use AI to do that marketing. The ones that have a human touch where a person is actually doing that are now at a premium because it's so easy to use AI for so many different things. So a couple of key themes there we're going to get into in the conversation today. And I want to show you a couple quick stats. So a couple big theme stats that just to shock you, I guess, to start off here, and then let the team chime in about some of their thoughts on these as we go. So number one, employers right now are 7 times more likely to say that they are trying to solve the problem of picking the best and most suitable candidate for the job. It's not about fixing our brand. It's not about trying to find more candidates, trying to drive more responses. It's all about how do we weave through all these people and find the exact right person we need for this job, because there are lots of people applying for jobs and it's more difficult than ever, it feels like, to find the real noise, find the real signal in all that noise. So that's a big one. Number two here, about 1 out of every 3 companies say that they are encountering candidates on a consistent basis that are intentionally misrepresenting themselves, which is a scary place to be. We're seeing these candidates that are doing all these things that are making companies draw back, and they're intentionally misrepresenting themselves. And then third piece here, the most damaging thing, when we ask employers like all of you, what damages that experience that candidates have, that perception they have of your company? What is the biggest problem there? It's the lack of feedback, lack of communication. If any of you have tried to apply for a job in the last year, you know that's a big issue. And yet, when we ask companies, hey, it's been really struggling, a big struggle, a challenge, a difficult time. If you're cutting back, what are you cutting back? The number one thing they're cutting back on is candidate feedback. So at a time where trust is at its lowest, we're actually cutting off the one thing that's most likely to lead to greater trust overall. All right, so lots of shares there. I'm going to pause and let my team here chime in. Any one of those stand out for you, George or Roberta, that you feel like, that like grips you, or you have anything you want to add to?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big one is that teams across the board are cutting the thing that candidates said mattered the most, which is really a priority problem, and candidates noticed clearly. So I think that's the really big takeaway for TA teams here, George.
Yeah, so for me, sorry about that. I was a little muted with that. I think for me, and Ben said it early on in the conversation, is like trust for me, and that the humanity gap is something that I've been focused on for a while. And a lot of it is really more so about the consistency and how consistency should be and is, in my perspective, a human value. And how we need to be more consistent in our messaging that will create that trust. So when you say there's a trust gap or what's a trust killer, I think part of that is really that lack of consistency. And I think this proves that while AI can provide speed, it cannot yet really provide the nuance, the empathy, the narrative of consistency that a human leader brings, right? Like a company that can do those things. And so there's still this cry for clarity, right? And from the workforce. And I think a lot of that is connected to in this world of AI driven noise, the most valuable thing for an employer to do is have consistency on that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought about, Ben, I'd love your thoughts on is
Sure.
what's behind the 1 in 3 number, what sits behind the misrepresentation, like whether it's deliberate fraud or companies pointing to their own processes, like unclear requirements or impersonal hiring, roles marked differently, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's a couple different things, actually. One of the things that we see in the data is companies are like, listen, we're going to give candidates some grace. We know it's a really tough market. And probably all of us at some point have colored outside the lines a little bit on our resume. We're like, oh, instead of being on the team, maybe I led the team. Like little things where they're changing it that way. Other times it's, you know what, we're posting a job that has 47 required skills. That's probably actually not a real picture of reality. And so we need to change that. Then candidates feel like they have to respond to that, or they're not going to look like a suitable candidate for the job, even though the company's fooling themselves, thinking they're going to find the perfect person out there. So there's a couple different things that factor into that. The big thing is, if I'm an employer and I'm trying to start this from a foundation of trust, that's really a tough place. You don't have a foundation to even start from, right? When we're already the very first time I meet you, you're like, my name may be Roberta, but maybe not. It's like, how do I form a connection with you? I don't really even know your name.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's the resume, their experience, all the other stuff they're putting out there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a really wild one. And some of these things that we're seeing are just incredible. And so we're actually working with Criteria. Shout out to them. I know that Josh had a great session earlier. They are working with us on some research around how resumes are falling off as a tool that employers can depend on. So right now we're seeing the majority of companies say application volume's up, and yet only about 1 out of 3 companies say that they're confident that the resume they're getting is an accurate depiction of that person, right? I gave the kind of wild example earlier about the candidate that was hiding some things in their history that weren't written on the resume. And in some cases, employers like, that's a very real thing. We're running across people that are adding things to the resume, or they're asking Claude or ChatGPT to copy the job posting and put it into the resume and make it look like that. And it's hard for them. And at the same time, like, those two things are real and true. And yet 2 out of 3 employers still use resumes as the very first step for screening, because it's what we've always used. It's what we're comfortable using, even if it's not good anymore. And I feel like it's like the old Henry Ford quote: if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Like, they wouldn't have said a car. And in this case, we're like, what are we going to do? We just need better resumes or faster sorting of resumes. Like, well, that may not even be the right answer if the resume is bad as a source piece of content or information we're trying to use.
To add on that, Ben, a really quick story. I was visiting Nashville and a friend in the tech space, in the wireless tech space. And one of the things that they literally switched from no resume. Their whole application process asked specifically for the things that they're seeking to know about the individual. Because of those things, because of the unknown, or is this actually real? Do they actually achieve these things? And the follow through, asking for references that many people probably don't really check the references, or maybe they check one and they happen to get the right person that's willing to tell the story, right? And so the whole application process for them is literally, we know 5 questions that we want to get to know them, and the rest are coming in connection with the interview process. And so it's interesting that some are using resumes, but the switch to that is being able to pinpoint what are the things that you want to see from a typical resume, and how can you pivot and ask those things or receive those things within the process of that hiring candidate.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Roberta.
No, I think it's really interesting because we're looking at 2 ends of it, like the candidate integrity problem versus the process design problem. And one likes to point at the other, right? And if we're using outdated processes and candidates are using AI to practice or to apply, et cetera, it's never ending circle of things that are not quite working the way we want it to. I had a couple of data points about trust too, that 58% said they trusted skills assessments more than resumes, 50% trusted structured interviews more, and yet only 26% use skills-based screening as their primary first step. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yes. One of the skills-based hiring piece has been in and out of the data in the last few years in a couple different ways. And Roberta, to your point, we saw skills-based hiring for the first time as a overall priority for talent teams kind of rising to the top. And I think it's because of what you just shared. I think it's because we're like, we've got to get to the actual, can George do this thing or not? Because if he can, then we're going to hire him. Or if can Roberta do this thing? Can we prove this or validate this somehow versus that person just told us they could do it or they said it's on their resume? Like we need a real proof of that capability in order to make that judgment call and really get them plugged in there. So, okay. So again, stay tuned. Some great research coming out on this. We're going to go deeper into what we can do to change this, what we can do for the companies already that are out there that are looking past resumes at other tools and other methods of making this happen. I wanted to share a bit of some AI wins. There are some very real positive opportunities there. There are also some losses, some challenges, some issues, and I wanted to make sure we gave fair and balanced sort of perspective on those. Roberta, do you want to touch on the wins just a bit there?
I do. And so 76% of AI users save at least, so there's always that the wins and the losses and they mirror each other, right? So that 76% say they save at least 2 hours of recruiter time per week. But then the flip side of that is, where does that time go? 15% of organizations have no clear plan. What that oversight number that you gave of people saving time. So everything has a flip side mirror, right? But I think the takeaway here is that AI has really disrupted, and most organizations are very much still mid-disruption and calling it implementation.
Mid-disruption and calling it, that's a quotable quote from Roberta there on that. I like that. It gets me because I'm thinking when I was a recruiter, I would have used these tools. I would have let them make me faster, make me more capable, all that sort of thing. But the human nature is to be drawn into handing off more and take your hands off the wheel and let it do what it wants to do. And there's some very real research that shows that leads to bad things. So really quickly on some of the challenges, some of the losses. So right now there are multiple HR technology vendors that are being sued for AI in hiring for some form or fashion. A couple different flavors of that going on, but that's happening right now as we speak. So that's creating a lot of caution and a little bit of concern about how do we do this the right way? How do we do this? Where are some low risk areas we can plug this in? And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but the opportunity is there, but we have to be careful. Overall is what I want to share. That story I just shared a minute ago, the friend of mine, she said, I'm asked to be this AI expert. I have to be this technology expert. And I'm just want to be a recruiting leader that tries to align the company's needs with the candidate's needs and make those things fit together. She's like, I'm being asked to do all these other things on top of that, which is a challenge. And then one last one I'll throw out there. We asked companies about their maturity in this. And some of you out there listening are one of those that's like cautiously, I'm trying it out, seeing how it goes. Some of you are, what else can I throw in there? What else can I use AI for? It's great. So there's a whole spectrum there, but only 20% of the companies that we're talking to that are using AI are doing any sort of audits or trying to do anything to make sure that they're not having any sort of adverse impact from that. And we would not do anything else in hiring. You wouldn't randomly throw in a new assessment without saying, does this affect our hiring in a way that could get us in legal hot water? For some reason, AI feels like it's cool and magical and so smart, and we don't need to worry about that. And you absolutely do as an employer. Your requirements for protecting candidates, protecting the business before are still there today. They haven't left, they haven't gone away. So you still have to do that sort of thing. That doesn't absolve you of your responsibility just because the AI tools seem like they're super cool and smart. All right, George, I know we're getting close on your time before you have to wrap up with us here today, but do you want to talk for a moment about some of the things you're seeing on the candidate side? We could spend a whole hour just doing this. I probably need to actually come back and do some candidate deep dives because there's so much there to cover. But what's a highlight or two for you?
Yeah, I think for me, Ben, the one highlight that I do want to focus on, it's one particular question that really grabbed my attention as I was looking at some of this. And it was when asked what damages the trust, when we talk about trust, and this is the one that really kind of triggered me, is when we ask what damages the trust in employers specifically during the hiring process and hiring process. One of the top, I'll just name the top 5, and I just want to break this down real quick. Number 1 was the lack of feedback or communication during the hiring process after applying. Number two was being rejected, right? Without any human touch. We talk about the human touch, the importance of empathy, compassion, the importance of not just sending an email saying, sorry, we're going to keep your name on file. Many of us, especially in my age, I've heard I'm going to keep your name on file so many times that nobody's ever contacted me. So we know what that means. We're moving forward without you. And yeah, we'll probably hold your thing here. And so you have that lack of trust, right? And we talk about in this day and age, the psychological safety has been talked about more than ever in the last year, and specifically over the last couple of weeks being in the events I've been attending. So you have that. The third was the perception of ghost jobs, these fake job postings and things of that nature. Number five was over reliance on AI and automated screenings without any type of human review of that. So it's not that AI is doing the work. It's like there's no human touch at all through this process. And so it's like the judgment of somebody who does not know George, does not get to see or hear from George, is making the decision prior to. And then the number five thing was inconsistent messaging from the recruiters and the hiring messages. And so you have one person saying another thing and a different saying another, and there's no distinct connection. There's no alignment within the messaging of a company. And so when you think about those things in general, Ben, for me, it's beyond humanity and it's even beyond the trust. It goes back to what I said earlier. It's the consistency and clarity that's really missing that gap. And so when I think about those things, I look at it as a void of humanity, but I also look at it as a rise of the algorithm anxiety, where there's this growing trust gap that's fueled by the almighty anxiety of algorithms. And candidates are now more concerned about these ghost jobs, these automated screenings, and about their own qualifications. Am I really qualified for these different things? And so when an applicant, and I'll put myself in those shoes, if I'm on that side of the table, I feel like I'm being judged by a machine without a human safety net. And so trust isn't just dented, it's destroyed, right? If I'm being trusted by this. And so when I think about my whole quote and statement of life, to be able to champion my purpose and be able to champion my purpose at work, Ben, I believe we have to ensure that AI serves as a bridge to recruiting, not a barrier to opportunities. And that is really going to be dictated again by what I said in the beginning. Consistency has to be a human value because of all the things that we're seeing in this. And the data, I'll say that word to make you smile. The data shows that inconsistency in messaging is a top 5 trust killer. And so how do we become consistent in those things where AI can probably and more likely has been speeding up the process? It cannot provide the nuance, the empathy, the narrative consistency that a human leader can bring to the table. And so we're seeing this cry for clarity from the workforce in this AI-driven noise. And I believe the AI noise can be a beautiful sound if we provide that consistency, if we provide that human-backed promise that says we see you, and not only do we see you, but we value you as well. I'm done. That's my rant.
I used that moment to go and peek really quickly. There was one of the stats that I could not recall off the top of my head. And when we ask candidates, how honest do you think companies are with how they represent themselves to applicants? Only 15% of candidates said companies are very honest. The other 85% say partially or not at all. So that is a clear issue and glaring stat that shows just how big that gap is right now. And when you look at some of the things, again, it's heartbreaking almost to look at the data points in there around. We ask candidates, how would you describe the hiring process right now? And the words they're using are heartbreaking because you see them calling out for, I need a chance. Give me an opportunity. Let me try. Judge me for me, not based on my resume. All those sorts of things they're saying, and they feel like they just don't get a fair shot. And it's really tough. Roberta, anything in there that stand out to you?
Well, I'm just still absorbing George's sound bites. The AI as a bridge to recruiting, not a barrier, and AI with a human-backed promise. Like they're going to land in our paper. But yeah, no, candidate trust and employer trust with AI as the accelerator right now. And you and I have had lots of conversations about if you're putting humans in this now, it feels like the standout candidate experience. And I know you've called that human premium, right? And it's what candidates are really looking for when they're applying. And increasingly, per George's point, just not finding, right? It's just slowly dwindling away.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really hard, honestly. So goodness. Okay. Let's go to our last bit here around a recommendation, some of the things that we can finish this up with here. So couple of things for all of you. You're hearing us paint this almost bleak picture, Roberta. I don't mean to be like the doom cloud, but there's some really tough stuff here going on. So for employers, all of you out there listening to us right now, we know you want to try to do well. You want to try to do right by candidates. We know you don't want to end up with that being in that 85% of companies where candidates are like, yeah, they're not fully trustworthy. So number one of the things we found in this is we've got to look at some different alternatives to resumes. They were never really that great to start with, but they're getting worse. AI generated resumes, someone that can go and pay a fee for $90 to a company and have them apply to 1,000 jobs on their behalf automatically. All those things are just cluttering it up, making it harder. And resumes, they signal, are decreasing in value. So we have to think about something different, whether that's an assessment, that's having people come in person, revisiting that. I actually had a chance to chat with a recruiter at LinkedIn on a webinar recently, and he said, we're doing more in-person interviews than we've done in a decade. And he said, I never thought we'd do that again, but it's one of our ways to get to the trust issue and the connection issue. One of the things that's involved in this, Roberta, that people have to think about is you have to go to your leaders with, listen, we're getting a lot more resumes, but it's also harder than ever to pick the right ones out of that. So don't celebrate that we've got 10 times as many resumes in the funnel, because that's 10 times as many people I've got to say no to at the end of the day. It's not a win for us as a company. And so that piece around the quantity does not matter as much as the quality does is a priority. The second piece here, AI, Roberta, actually jump into this one. This was one of your recommendations. I love it.
Yeah, so from the data, and I don't know, we're not bringing in a new data point here, but a lot of majority of organizations said they plan to redirect AI time savings towards improving candidate experience and communication. So to move on from the doom and gloom scenario, that's a stated plan. That's great. That's what we see is necessary. Just with the thing to keep in mind is that cut in candidate feedback loops that happened in the last year, right? We don't want that to happen here. We need to address this as a next step to improve candidate experience. There's a real tension in there. We've got the tools to fix it with AI.
Yes, absolutely. Something is better than nothing, right? And a more timely response is better than, you and I both probably seen those LinkedIn posts where it was like, oh yeah, I got rejected for a job that I applied for 2 years ago. And it just came in this week. Like, that's comically terrible. So let's try to avoid some of those sorts of things. And our good friend, Lance Sapera, if you're listening, Lance, today, we appreciate you, man. One of his company's priorities is we don't do text breakups. If we had a conversation with you, we will give you a call to let you know that you are not going to move forward. We don't just text you or email you and let you off the hook, because that's not fair to you after you've done us the honor of giving us some of your time to connect with us. And then one last one here, sort of around the process piece, is we have to go back to the beginning on how we train managers to do interviews. We have to go back to the beginning on how we design our screening processes, what criteria we're using for selection, because we have to think differently about some of those things and not just continue doing the same thing we've always done, because it's not going to get us the same results we've always gotten. In today's environment, it's going to get us worse results than we've always gotten. And we can't just continue down that path. So these are some of the big stats, some of the big things we're seeing in the data. As I mentioned, I said it to George kind of off the cuff, but I think we'll actually do this, come back and do a more in-depth session around candidate specific data, because there's so much in that data set that we could go into and look at some of the things we can do. We ran some really cool experiments this year with the way that you reject candidates, the way that you talk to them, and which ones would make them more willing to apply for another job at that company later on. We use some different things around how you mentioned that you're using AI screening in the hiring process and how candidates agree to that. So lots of good stuff in there. So we'll have to come back and share some of those things again. So Roberta, I know George had to drop off, but thank you for joining us today, for sharing some of your insights on this, your perspectives on this. It's so much fun to get to do the research life with you. And to all of you out there, thank you for letting us share with you today, for coming and joining the session and letting us talk about some of the research. We're going to transition back to me and George here for us to wrap it up. That was weird, George. You had to drop off the recording piece, but then you're back here again. I felt a little bit out of place trying to figure out how to do that. So we went through so much good data, and I just sent you a text a minute ago, so you can confirm that for the audience. But we really do want to come back together and do a session around like the voice of the candidate, talking about some of those things. Even if we're in an environment right now where employers get to be choosy, employers hold a lot of power because there's lots of people looking for work right now. with the exceptions of the comments earlier about like craft jobs, healthcare, some industries and positions where there's a shortage of skills. Overall, though, if we know that there are ways that we can make changes to improve the candidate experience right now, to deal with that weird fraud issue, or we're struggling with that, to deal with some of the other challenges that are around that, to use the tools to create better outcomes because they're addressing the things candidates care about. For me, those things are all opportunities we have. And so I want to dive deeper into it because we did some really cool experiments. Maybe I'm just cheating. It's a really cool way to tell you about these experiments we ran. And I can't get into it now if we're at time, but with some pretty wild experiments we ran with candidates to see how they feel about things like consent that employers are using AI, or how they feel about the kind of feedback we give them if we say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. What can we say that's going to make them want to apply for a job with us again? Because there are certain things we say that turn them off. And George, you sort of highlighted that when you said, oh, we'll keep it on file. Don't worry. So lots of good stuff there. All right. George, we're going to give some things away before we wrap up. And we have some credits, I think, as well. Correct?
Correct. I mean, as always, man, we want to shout out our great partners at Phenom and Criteria for being a part of this incredible 2-hour session. And, of course, all of our people who has been viewing, watching, commenting. Such a great conversations. A lot of great starred highlights, what we call starred on our side. A lot of great call outs and highlights from a lot of our people watching today. So thank y'all for continuing to support and join us. Real quickly, just a brief announcement. If you're interested in any of the research that Ben, Roberta, myself, or any of our clients have mentioned on this, make sure you scan the QR code, or you can go to lhra.io/access to be able to get access to all our research that we've done. Recently, we got a lot more coming up this year.
Yes.
We're very excited about all those things, and then even more of this talent acquisition. I know some people are asking about the slides that we were sharing. You'll be able to email as well that to Jill, and we'll get the information. So thank y'all so much for the support on that. But as always, we should change I'm gonna change it moving forward. But these are going to be called the giveaways. But we got to get like Ben giveaways, the Benways or Benaways.
Mm-hmm.
The Benaways of everything that we do here on our virtual events. Everybody that's on the screen right now, if you see your name, screenshot this, but also make sure you email TA 2026 to events at lhra.io, and the wonderful Jill will be reaching out to y'all, and we'll be shipping the great book, Talent Scarcity by the best-selling author, Ben Eubanks. And so we're excited about that. So if you see your name, make sure you screenshot this and share your full shipping address so we can get this shipped out to you. Our team will get those shipped out to you here in the next week or so. On that, last but not least, Ben, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, my friend, for helping put this on, and all your great data, the king of data, the beast of data. The king of data. I was going to go through all these different things that you.
Thanks for not doing that, George. Goodness gracious. Anybody that needs your credits, your codes are here on the screen for friends with an HRCI or SHRM certification. Y'all grab those credit codes. Again, take a screenshot if you need to, so you have that handy. I believe Jill's going to be reaching out again to everyone with a follow-up in the next day or so with a couple of other resources. We have one more live stream coming up in a few weeks, actually just a few weeks away, in advance of summer school that happens in June. So June's the biggest event we do every year. 3 days of this, lots of energy, lots of excitement. I mean, we give away all kinds of wild stuff during those events. So it's a blast. We'll be doing our event in just 2 more weeks, and Jill's going to share that with all of you to connect in on that topic around comp and using that as a lever to drive retention, engagement, hiring, all those sorts of things, how we can use it for incentives, and some of the things that many of us, including me, have gotten wrong about it. There's some really good myth busting in that. So for all of you out there, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I've seen so many good comments, good inputs, good feedback already about the event. I know over the next day, George and I are both going to be smiling big as we're getting those continuing to pour in from some people watching it both live and on demand. So thank you all for joining us today, for the impact you're having on the people and the candidates you're trying to serve. As I've seen here, we've seen lots of challenge, lots of difficulty, lots of struggle right now. And yet there's also this opportunity, as we heard from Ryan at the very first session today, this is our chance to make an impact on somebody. And so thank you to all of you for doing just that. George, my friend, always a great joy to be able to share the stage with you virtually here. appreciate you for your inputs, your comments, and as you said earlier, for making HR a necessary thing by having managers just like you out there. Appreciate you, my friend. To all of you out there, thank you again. We'll see you again next time.
We want to thank everybody for joining us today on this live stream.
For more information, you can find our website at lhra.io.